Healing with Human Connection, where we have encouraging conversations about tough topics such as substance abuse, drug addiction, and mental health issues for those in the Northwest Indiana area. Our hope is to share information that will guide you to resources that can help you change your life so that you can live the life you were meant to live. Check out our website, www.healingwithconnection.com, to find a full transcript of today's conversation, along with a list of any resources or links mentioned in this episode. Enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, welcome. Here we are at Healing with Human Connection, and I'm Jeanne Cannon. I'm a therapist, and of course Lisa, our health life coach, also author of Lisa, tell us.
From Fear to Faith, a family's journey with addiction, recovery, and grace. So, we're really excited that we're out here sharing the story about, the mental health and addiction and how that affects families, and how, with the right resources and help, we can heal that. So
Absolutely, and that is our goal. And of course, we're so excited to have Mr. Charlie Adams. He's here to talk to us a little bit about his story with addictions and recovery, and of course our mission. And Cassie's here. We're so excited. The gal behind the scenes doing all the technology. Thank you, Cassie. But really, our mission, as Lisa said, is to talk about not only addictions and recovery, but mental health, and how do you get help for that, and which all is intertwined, as we know, being therapist and life coach. And Charlie certainly will give some insight, because when you're struggling yourself and or a family member, it's so multifaceted and so complex, and you don't know where to start and what to do, and how do you get help? So that is our mission. And without further ado, Charlie, again, thank you.
Oh, Jeanne, I'm so glad to be here,
well,
really.
We're thrilled to have you here. And why don't you tell us, besides just being a great speaker, motivational speaker, and all kinds of interesting background, tell us a little bit about yourself, Charlie.
I'm originally from Oxford, Mississippi, and my parents divorced there when I was in first grade. My mother was very driven and went from an elementary school teacher to a doctorate, primarily a reading specialist, teaching teachers how to help struggling readers. So she taught at the University of Texas, and I was with her. And when I was in fourth grade, she became a professor at Duke. And ended up being Professor of the Year. She wrote many books on literacy and was nationally known in the 70s. So she was a big influence on me. But I moved back to Mississippi to finish high school with my dad, living down there in the country, and went to the University of Mississippi, got into broadcast communications, became a sports anchor in markets like Bakersfield, California, South Bend, and New Orleans. On the 6 and 10 o'clock news, I was the guy that did the sports. And along the way did speaking, because you get asked to speak if you're an anchor. Come out and speak at so-and-so.
Sure.
And then I went professional with it in 2006, primarily at retreats and events and what have you. And that's what I've done mainly for the past 17 years.
Great.
That's fantastic.
Great. Yeah. Such an interesting background. And then maybe tell us, given addictions and recovery, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your story.
Yes, my mother, her family, her brother had a severe drinking issue, which led to his death, and my mother struggled with it. I was young, I didn't quite understand it, but I think part of it was the stress of being a professor at Duke, head of the Reading Center, nationally known, and she really believed in her way to reach struggling inner city readers, which went opposite of, say, what the state did. And it was very stressful for her, because she passionately believed in it. And I can remember Mom coming home with 6 packs, and I think it was her de-stress, and it got worse and worse and worse. And then when I was a freshman in college, it got to the point one time she had so much, she took her own life. When I was 18, I was a freshman in college, and I think it was a staggering thing, which actually I did not know for a number of years, because they told me it was a heart attack. It was put in the newspapers, but because back then with mental health, this was 1980, November. It wasn't the thing to put that in there.
Yeah, right. We didn't talk about it.
Yes.
It was always a secret. Yeah.
Yes, and I remember going into TV news thinking my mom had died of a heart attack in the 30s. I went to the doctor to get my heart checked, and I said, well, my mom died in her 40s of a heart attack. He said, your ticker's fine. Then her best friend, a fellow college professor, told me a number of years later. And so then I was married for about 10 years and 2 beautiful children. And my wife at the time initiated divorce, and that was very hard. Remarried for about 8 years, and the same thing happened. And I'm not here to point fingers and blame of the divorce. I did not initiate either one. Had a 3rd child in the second, lost pretty much everything I had. And the second one, I'd always been like a normal drinker, per se, if there is such a thing.
Yeah.
And the second one, for a motivational speaker, I didn't do a lot of speaking because I just kind of, sort of just, that's it. It was so devastating that I went from wine, beer, to the vodka, to blacken at nights to escape. And did this for a number of years. And it was bad. You did things I don't even remember. But I never lost my faith in God, and God knew my heart meant well. I went to AA. I even, one of my little regional motivational books, I put a chapter in there about quitting drinking because I was doing anything I could. I said, well, I'll put that in there and it'll put the pressure on me, but I didn't. And I would go to AA meetings in South Bend, and people were like, well, there's the guy that used to be on the news, you know, and all that, because I was a public figure. But God brought me to meet a lady named Beth Pettingill, who had lost her husband to cancer a few years before. They were missionaries. She had a son, Judah, who had been praying for Dad because he was a little kid when his dad died. And when I met Beth at Centennial Park in person in Plymouth in April of 2016, I knew then that things were changing. But what I learned along the way was I had to totally 100% fall on my knees and surrender to God. It couldn't be conditional, like I'll do pretty much what you want. And so God had a plan for me of recovery to move to North Judson, Stark County, for their family, to help them. They helped me. And by August of that year, the vodka was done. And if you told me that from 2016, going back to when this started in 2011, 5 years, I could not beat it. And he had a plan, and then that was it at that point. So it's Beth. She and her late husband Stan worked in Amsterdam, the red light district, with addiction people, Hopi Reservation. And I hope you all can have Beth on sometime, because she's been a hero to me.
Oh, that's a wonderful story.
And that's yet to try to tell. There's much more. There's a lot more details to it. But if anything, I tell people. And I know there's great programs out there without a doubt, but I'm a big believer in that. I 100% said, God, whatever you want to do here. Because some people might go, well, anything, but I'm not going to Stark County. You know, I'll do recovery, but I'm staying here, it's wherever, right. And God was like, and so then I did a radio show for 5 years there. Actually, Stark County, North Judson is a lot more like where I grew up, outside Oxford, Mississippi. So pure country kind of folks was more comfortable for me. But I do believe, I'm a big faith believer, that you just have to surrender to His will 100% all in. And along with all the other professional programs that are very, very important.
So I think you bring up a really good point, which is everyone's recovery path is so different. And what works for some doesn't work for others, but worked for you was giving it up to God, and that was really where you made some really good changes.
Absolutely, and I respect what the other people do. I do believe there has to be a commitment in that area. And it did work for me. I think going to the AA meetings, when I walked in there in the west side of South Bend, and people used to watch me do the sports, and they were like, they didn't know really, right, and all that. But I think being humble, there are people that when I crashed and burned for those 5-6 years in South Bend that used to know Charlie Adams of the news, like what happened to him, but they don't know. And people out there need to understand, people may not know everything, but you need to know that God always loves you and is on it and will never give up on you. And He reached down. I was in depths that are embarrassing to talk about, now to get into details. And I was, he rescued me and saved me and put me to use in His kingdom's calling. down there because a little boy had been pregnant. Judah, I think it's amazing.
And when you talked about being in South Bend and at the AA meetings and people recognizing you, you also helped alleviate the stigma of it. Addiction and alcoholism doesn't know any socioeconomic boundaries. Like, it happens to all of us, you know, and not just people that aren't on the news.
That's
Right.
excellent
And all
point.
different kind of careers, you
Yeah.
know, that's what you find out, where they're neighbors next door. We have these same struggles. We're
Yes.
not, you know,
Yes.
What would you say, Charlie, to people listening to you? You know, being a high profile person, that had to be, I'm thinking of the emotional gymnastics you had to take to go to an AA meeting. You know, being a very
Yes.
well-known person. What would you say to someone listening who is shameful and embarrassed about their usage and some of the events, problematic things that have happened? What might you say to them about that?
Well, we don't know sometimes your whole backstory. Nobody really knows everything. Like 99% of the people that used to know me on the news have no idea about my mother's struggles or what happened to her. Or there was another case where a cousin on her side did something to me. They just knew me as the public figure.
Right.
And you've just got to know that you are loved, and you may have been knocked around, but just to keep trying and to reach out. There are people that want to help you, and you do have to bring that humility to it, but there are professionals out there that can help you. And for me, I've always covered people. I've done thousands of interviews with people that have overcome things. And that's really what I do as a motivational speaker. I have a bazillion stories of people, so I know it happens every day. It does. And there are people
it's like
that...
we have our own struggles. Whatever that struggle is,
Yeah.
everybody's up against something. But,
Yes.
you know, we need to persevere and move forward.
Yes, have compassion. Everyone's battling something, and some of it is hereditary that I didn't quite know on my mother's side. I mean, her brother James Perry and her, it was voracious, and that was never quite explained to me.
They didn't talk about it,
Right.
as you said.
Yes.
Well, and then what I'm hearing you say is that nobody really knows what wounds other people are numbing with alcohol. So it starts as a coping strategy of, I don't want to feel this right
Yes.
now, the divorce and other things. I don't want to feel, so I'm going to have a couple beers, and then the hereditary, the disease of addiction keeps continuing to grow, and then we're where we're at. Right?
Yes, because I remember there's a scene, if you've ever seen NBC's This Is Us, which was a very popular
Yes.
series, when Toby and Kate divorce and they're outside the courthouse and they talk a little bit and they separate. And I lived that twice. And then when you have to move your things out of the house and go to a place, a lesser place, in that first night of going to bed, that's when the numbing starts. And my wife Beth has said, see, for my case, and I know there are people out there that would drink all day and night. I couldn't imagine that in the morning.
Right.
And I'm better than anybody. It was a night thing. I couldn't stand to go to bed by myself.
Right.
So the numbing and the coping. And then it just snuck into the harder stuff.
Progressive.
It's a
Right,
progressive
right,
disease.
right. And that's where it was sad because being a public figure, I let a lot of people down, but they didn't know.
Right.
But you let yourself down.
Yes.
That's
Right.
part of that shame.
Right.
You know?
And I was just going to say the shame part of it, you know, and the numbing of the feelings. I don't think society teaches us that it's okay or normal or expected or it's going to happen, that we have horrific anxiety during a divorce
Right, right.
or a death, and how do we handle these horribly deep, challenging
Painful
feelings?
things.
Yeah, right. So understandably that in our world, in our society, that we turn to alcohol or drugs to numb that feeling. But I love you talking, Charlie, about just keep on trying other things. You know, you talked about 5 years of struggling, and I'm sure you tried a lot of different
did.
things, but don't give up hope, I guess? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, keep trying. You know, they say when you're going through hell, keep going. Really. I mean,
I gotta get on the other
That's
side.
a great
Yeah.
saying. I never heard that.
Yes, it's
keep
wonderful.
taking steps.
Right.
Keep seeking things. I went to the church I was at, Evangel Heights. I asked them to pray on me, and it helped. But then there was that big hurdle. One thing that helped me is a lot of people, times you can watch this online and you don't have to go in person, but I went to hear a speaker, Chris Herron, speak. Now, he was a former well-known basketball player that had horrific addiction issues at the height of his playing career. To when he played for the Boston Celtics, he was so addicted to OxyContin, he had to run out of the arena in his warm-ups to his dealer in pregame warm-ups. And again, I recommend Chris Herron. He's been speaking since 2008. I saw him in person, and he also surrendered. He fell to his knees, even after a counselor told him. The depths of his story are staggering. He even had a counselor say, you ought to just disappear and they can report that you died, so your wife and kids. That ticked him off as a competitive athlete. Now, I don't say that's the way to do with others,
Right.
but he later said him being an NBA athlete, it got him going, and then he fell to his knees. But like you said, it's different for everyone. I was kind of taken aback by that. But one thing he's also said, when we get to the root of all this, is talking more about it, but also like in schools to emphasize wellness more. Academics are important, but we need more wellness. We need young people understanding the beauty of their body, taking care of it, and other things there.
Right. And, there's the book Emotional Intelligence. We don't get, as a young person, middle-aged, older, that we have to take time for our mental health.
Yes.
We don't get that.
And that's one of the reasons we reach out for booze and alcohol. It's because we don't know how to handle those yucky feelings. They're yucky. I don't like them. I need them to go away.
And you learn them from generational. So my husband, who's from Germany, his family, how they dealt with it is you drank and you did shots and you drank and you did shots. Well, that's all he knew. He didn't know outside his circle that you don't have to deal with it that way. So, that's kind of gave him, that was kind of how that snowballed in our family as well. So now he's had to learn different ways to deal with that.
Yes. And I think there's such pressure nowadays to be busy. We're human beings, not doings.
Right.
And I'm 60 now, and I'm seeing things with a whole different perspective because I'm still in the lane of activity, but I'm 60.
Sure.
So the energy's not there, and I'm finding taking care of myself, doing some things professionally to help people. But so many people out there, I gotta go, I gotta do it. And I'm not that impressed by people that are just super busy if they're not taking care of themselves.
Exactly, because how can they be good for other people when they're not, and they're stressed out and they're negative and they're just because they're taking what they're feeling and extending it to others. So
that's pressure in our society tells us that we have to be doing instead of just being. That
It's
starts
the first
at
question you ask when you meet somebody. Oh, what do you do?
And I'm cognizant of that if I'm at a social event to not ask that.
Yep, me too. I say, what brings you joy?
Right.
what did you
Right.
enjoy?
It's a completely different question.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
awesome.
It's a
It
wonderful
stumps people.
point.
They go, huh?
Because they're prepared to say, I'm a lawyer. Wait.
Wait, joy? What's that?
Yeah. And Charlie, what would you say to family members who have someone who's struggling, how to get help for themselves or help their struggling family member?
Yes, there's whole programs out there for the family members. And I know how hard it was on my son, Jack, who was, this was just before he went in the Navy. And I had a little rental place in the heart of downtown South Bend, and he lived with me for a while, and he saw it, and it hurt him deeply and everything. And I can remember one night when the police even came because a friend that I had reached out to via text, who knows what I wrote, and later you're like, oh my gosh, because that's what the vodka would do. And then he was there. But boy, Heidi, I think to reach out to other people that have been there, done that, the programs out there.
Yeah, okay.
Because nowadays, like back then, Charlie, there wasn't, it was a hidden thing. Like we can take care of it ourselves. We're not going to tell people this is what's going on in our life. Nobody will ever understand. And when you, nowadays, 10 years later, there is actually resources there because we have come to identify that this is something that is not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. And mental health and substance abuse go hand in hand.
Yes.
And so there are so many resources today that.
And Lisa, what would you say as far as family member and resources? Where do they begin to even read about or talk to someone, as Charlie's saying, that's been through that?
Yeah,
where
I
would
think
you
they should
direct
just
them?
reach out, they can reach out to myself, they can reach out to you, they can reach out to anybody that we've had on. Just make a connection. Go to Recovery Connections, just make a connection with someone, and then they can start pointing you in the right direction.
Mhm.
Because
Right,
I
and
think
if that connection doesn't feel right, as Charlie's saying, and all of us know, keep on
Keep
looking.
Yes.
Because, we as therapists and life coaches, and I'm sure, Charlie, you and talking to all the people, some programs might work for someone and might not. Some people might like AA or Al-Anon, might not. So you got to keep on looking what
yeah,
fits
there's
for
not
you.
one, it's a journey, not a destination. So you just have to keep on trying different things, and you'll find what fits for you and what, but connect with people that are like-minded so that you can know that you're not alone.
Yes, and another thing that my father battled depression significantly, and so I inherited both of these things. But one thing I suggest to folks is I've always exercised. To me, a priority is to get to the fitness center first thing or what have you. The other accomplishments can wait, and that has helped a lot for me.
Right, it all intertwines. Your
Yes.
physical health, emotional,
Yes.
spiritual, right, all connected. If
Yes.
one's out of whack, it's going to throw the others out of whack, right?
Absolutely, and my wife Beth was very frank with me about things. And you think about it, when I met her see, that's another thing. You've got to listen to the Lord. Like, I dated various people for about 5 years there, and it just didn't work. And it's very frustrating when you think you're going to be married, and then you're back out there, and there's that on both ends.
Right,
Or sometimes they looked at me like, no. Right? It wasn't. So I can remember seeing Beth at Centennial Park, because we had communicated by phone that we met in Plymouth at the park. And I knew right then that it was going to be okay. And that was April. And then, and my issues, and she saw it a few times where, but it wasn't every night anymore after that. It was like every fourth night, and then every ninth night. And then there was a night in August where that vodka went goodbye. And there was a test the next year. I did a talk in Alaska, a conference up there. I don't do a lot of what I call big shot events. They're mainly in this part of Indiana. But someone who had seen me asked me to speak at a major conference in Anchorage. So when you go up there, you're there for a few days. You don't just fly in and fly out.
Yeah.
And so the hotel I was at was right next to a liquor store. As far as, and the vodka was kind of, I said, no.
Yeah. You're a little nervous giving a talk. So
Right.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because this was a high corporate event. And the thing about speaking, when you're in front of peak performers that was their site of their international summit. The next year it might have been in Denver or Paris.
Right.
So you've
Big stuff.
got to bring it
Right.
for 60 minutes
Bring it
or
on.
they'll go. And so it was almost like, okay, went through that.
Yeah, but so we do get tested. Recovery is a journey too, as you
Yes.
say, Lisa. And continue to get support and onward. Because there's always something behind the closed door that's a little shaky for any one of us on any one of these issues.
It is. It's I'm like my mother. When you grow up against someone, she was in Newsweek magazine. She was in newspapers across America. She was intense with her reading program. And I also, we inherit the fire within of some people that are peak performers in our families, and that can be good or bad.
Right.
You got a fire, and that fire's got to be regulated, or it can burn up a place, or just heat it nicely.
Balance.
And so that it came to me, and so my reaction sometimes was pretty volatile to things. And so you put vodka would make me angry, and then I would just do things that were not physically out there. Never did anything like that. But the problem was in the day of social media, something that you might write or what have you, that people are like, what's going on? Right. And so it was embarrassing. But now I've found as a speaker, and when I did the morning show, I can relate to audiences so well, because when I look out there, I can see in the faces there's someone that's hurting, someone struggling, someone going through things, someone's got it together. And I'm up there and I'm like, and not that I speak on this, but I definitely have empathy for people.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes, definitely.
We're just human.
Yes.
And we all need help sometime.
Right.
There you
right.
go. Especially with the holidays coming up, right?
Yes.
Yes.
That is a trigger. Talk about triggers and funny places. The holidays can be a trigger. So, I want to thank you, Charlie, so
Yes,
much
yes,
for
thank
you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Jeanne.
today. Oh, you are so
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you, Stacy.
Stacy, Lisa, anything else to add?
No, I think this is just amazing, and I really appreciate Charlie coming on and talking with us and just sharing his background and just kind of bringing it to a light that we're all in this together, and we're here to support.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you reaching out and everything.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, a delight having you, Charlie. We wish you all the best. Thank
You
you.
all too for doing
Thank
this.
you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for joining us. Come back next week. We'll have someone new, and keep Charlie's messages in your heart. And for those of you who are struggling, or family members struggling, there is hope, there is help, but you have to keep looking. And you're welcome to call any one of us. We could probably put you in touch with Charlie if you want to talk to Charlie. So we wish you well and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, let us know by leaving a comment or review and sharing with a friend. All resources mentioned today and a full transcript of this episode can be found by going to our website, www.healingwithconnection.com. A video of this recording can be found on our YouTube channel, and the audio podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts.